Hi there. You're watching Pop Culture Warrior. This is the way.
Hi there. It's your second favorite DP right here, okay? No, that's Deadpool, you silly little Hufflepuff. Anyways, I'm gonna need you to shut up that pretty little mouth of yours and pay attention because the show's about to start, alright? And, I don't know about you, but I know who's my vote for sexiest ex-soldier turned pop culture show host. Alright, enough foreplay. Let's get on with the show.
Broadcasting live from the basement of a Pentagon. This is WTF Nation Radio.
Hey everybody, welcome one and all. Today is July 18, 2023. This is episode 139 of Pop Culture Warrior. It's the show where I stay up to date on all the ins and outs of what's happening in pop culture so you don't have to. I am CQ, I am your Pop Culture Warrior, and joining me now is tonight's man in the bubble, the original Kid Elf himself. Ladies and gentlemen, let's bring in Mr. Angry Elf. Yeah, buddy.
Hello there.
Hello there. What's up, man? How are you doing?
Not much. Living the dream, you?
Living the dream. It's been a minute since we chatted.
Exactly.
Since we had you on the show.
You had to go on vacation, and then you had to go on some special ops out in LA, and
Been
now you're
traveling.
back.
Traveling quite a bit.
Yeah.
A big hello to everyone out there, including our Kick audience. We're now on Kick too, man. Of all things, man. So shout out to all y'all watching on Kick. We appreciate you. Say hi in the chats. Just a reminder, I can see that there are many eyes upon us, but I can't tell who it is. So if you say hi or hey or what's up in the chats, I can see you're watching. I can shout you out. I can say, hey, what's up, man?
You know what they
Back
might be
to
doing?
you.
They
What's
might
that?
be doing what I do when I'm not, co-hosting. I listen to you to fall asleep. So they might be like half out.
Fair enough. I mean, that's that's it. Somebody told me once, they're like, how do you think shows like Law and Order and them have such high viewership? It's because everybody falls asleep, never changes the channel. Yeah, so I'll take it, man. I'll take it if it means high numbers.
Exactly.
I'll take it. So real quick, just to mention, tonight we have joining us a man who's he's going to be only the second ever repeat guest on this show. We're going on 4 years. We're a couple months short, but we're almost at 4 full years of Pop Culture Warrior, and this will only ever have been our second repeat guest.
That's impressive.
He is Peter, and I hope I don't butcher this, Tamte or Tamte? I'm not sure. We're going to clarify that. That'll be the first question we clarify. Peter Tamte. And he is the founder and CEO of Victura Games, which is the company behind the infamous and now critically acclaimed 6 Days in Fallujah, which is a phenomenal game. They really knocked out of the park. Lots of great success with that. So we're going to have him on later. We're going to talk all about it. Talk about video games, the industry, military and video games, military and pop culture and video games, all of that. And Scott says, guess they won't be back for a third time. That is probable. So we got him coming out. But real quick, shout out to all of you watching at home. Thank you, Heath, Tony. Tony said, good day, mate. So God bless, man. I don't know what time it is in the down under, but thanks for joining. Throw another shrimp on the Barbie for me. All right.
Maybe he's going walkabout.
Yeah. All I can think of is like really stereotypical things to say, like
Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah, this is what's the dingo ate me baby? Like,
the dingo ate your baby.
Yes, exactly. Bob Myers, what's up, man? Heath, Stefan, 3:05 here in Kuwait. Hope it's 3:05 p.m. Tony says 10 a.m. in Australia. All right, man.
Okay.
Thanks for tuning in, man. 10 a.m.
Starting his day right. Starting his day with Pop Culture Warrior. That's how you start a day.
With
Way to go.
CQ and Angry Elf. Oh, Jesus. It's 3 a.m. where you're at? Why are you watching me? I mean, thanks. The hell are you watching me, though? 3 a.m. in the morning.
At 3 a.m.
just keep both hands where I can see them. That's all I'm saying. I don't know what you're doing at 3 a.m., but just keep the hands where I can see them. Mad Mike's chilling out with us. Scott, what's up, buddy? Thank you guys for tuning in. Always much appreciated. This show is nothing without you guys. So we got a lot to talk about tonight. A lot of serious stuff to talk about. Yeah. But first, before we dive into that, you did make mention. I wanna shout out MGS Con, the Metal Gear Solid. I mean, it was not Metal Gear Solid Convention because, copyright laws and everything. So it's called the Memes, Jeans with a G, and Snakes Convention, which is obviously in reference to Metal Gear Solid. It was all things Metal Gear. What a phenomenal experience. I flew into LA Friday. It was all day Saturday, and I mean all day Saturday. And then I flew back Sunday. It was such a great experience. This was the first ever. It was put on by this woman named Amanda I mean, honestly, I should have brought Amanda on just because like how it all came about is
Yeah.
incredible, and then how it became what it is. So basically, she just had this idea of she thought there should be a con like this, and she put it up, or she reached out to Vanessa Marshall, who we had on the show a couple weeks ago,
Right.
who's one of the voices of that and so many other things. And she was like, man, like I'd love to do this, and I don't know. And Vanessa said, like, look, man, put it up on like Kickstarter. And if it's successful, like, we'll get all the people involved, and we'll do it.
Yeah.
We'll do it to it. She said, especially if you do it so that there is a main charity. And for her, she had said specifically Wounded Warrior Project, like that she would like donate her proceeds and all this and all that, and like as long as it's for a good cause, we'll bend over backwards and we'll get everything done. And so they kickstarted it, and it got funded, which is incredible. And then it became this big thing, and they got so many of the voices involved. I think it was like 9 or 10 of the voices. It would have been more. Unfortunately, one of the guys had to back out at the last minute, personal reasons. And then 2 of the other voices weren't in the country at the time of the convention. But they dialed in, which was another whole cool story about how they did a big panel with all the actors, and then they dialed in on like a Zoom and a virtual thing. And it was great. The whole thing was awesome. From 9 in the morning to 10 a.m., there was a VIP meet and greet that I was so graciously invited to. And it was such an intimate experience. You had most of the guests that were in attendance were there. It was coffee, pastries and things, and just a small gathering, a very small gathering. And we're just sitting around talking, just chit-chatting like people do, little coffee social. And it was such a cool experience, such, unique experience. And then at 10, the doors open and it started like, man, I've done so many conventions. And there's always a lot of similarities, right? You have entertainment guests, you have panels, you have vendors selling things, you have photo ops, signature opportunities, sometimes music, there was gaming. So like there's the classic beats of a convention.
Right.
But this, without me blowing any smoke, this stood out in a number of ways. One was that it was singular in focus, right? Whereas most conventions are kind of wide. Even if you say even if you think of something like I don't know, like a Gary Con, which is like all Dungeons and Dragons, that's still a pretty large array and spectrum of things and content.
Yeah.
Whereas like this was so specifically like video game and one specific series. So like I've never experienced anything like where it was so dialed in to one very specific thing. But that being said, the level of enthusiasm, the level of excitement was at like a fever pitch from start to finish. And now, this was the first year ever. It was not without little bumps along the way, right? There was some confusion with lines and how they had kind of set up the signing, and it didn't have a really good flow, but it was super hot because we were like in this convention. I don't think they anticipated the amount of people and the tight space of it. So it was very warm the first couple of hours.
How many people showed up? Do you know?
Oh man, I don't know the exact count, but I will say it never thinned out at any point. And that's what I was going to say. The other thing that really stood out to me, typically in something where you see signings, and I've done this enough, and I think you've been with me on a few of them, that you'll see it's very busy early.
Right.
And then right after lunch, it usually starts to decline and decline to the point that with about an hour or two to go, sometimes it's like dead. Right? Yeah. Depending, like, obviously, we're not talking like a New York Comic Con that has 100,000 people in attendance, but most typical conventions that are in the 10 to 20,000 even really start to see a decline, especially like on the last day after lunch. It really starts to depend. There was never a moment where I looked around and went, "Oh, it's kind of dead. It's kind of quiet." Like the line for autographs, the line for meet and greets, the line for photos was never empty. It was never empty.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really wild.
Wow.
It's really wild to me to the point where I think it was like 30 minutes before closing, they literally had to go, okay, like, they wanted the staff to have an opportunity to meet and say hi and whatever. And so they did that. But like, they were like flickering on and off the lights to tell people like, okay, it's time to go. Like, it's time to go. And what ended up happening is, I don't want to say like, oh, all hell broke loose, but no, but in a way that it was really cool to see that they kind of shut down the convention aspect, right? Like the vendors kind of started packing up, the guests, packed up and left. They dimmed the lights, and what ended up happening is like the DJ that was there playing music started bumping music, and it became like a rave. Like literally everybody kind of shifted, and you literally saw people just dancing. And it was incredible to see. Yes, exactly. That's exact. It was, again, I've never really seen anything like that. And, it was
awesome.
incredible to see. So it was such a really cool experience. All the voice actors that were there were incredibly nice and incredibly giving of their time.
That's awesome.
3 of the people there we've had on the show before. So Debbie Mae West, who's also does voices for Naruto and others. Vanessa Marshall, obviously, who's done a bunch of stuff. And then Josh Keaton, who's also the voice of Spider-Man, the Spectacular Spider-Man, as well as Captain America in the Marvel What If. And he was, young Ocelot in the Metal Gear series. So it was great to catch up with 3 people that we've had on the show and see them face to face. And in fact, I don't know if you can see it. It's in red by the White Ranger helmet. She had promised me, back when I had a show, she said, "Oh, I got to send you this like AAA anime Funko Pop of Tsunade."
Yeah.
And I had forgotten about it. Totally forgot about it. And she sees me, she goes, "Oh my God, CQ, I owe you a Funko. I'm so, I got crazy. I was busy and blah, 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 blah." And she goes, "I got you. Hang on." And she like pulls it out, signs and everything, and then gives it to me. So she was awesome. Josh was great. Everybody was so cool. I got to sit down and do very quick vignette interviews, 3 to 5 minutes, with everybody was there from Otacon to Gray Fox to Liquid Snake to the Boss to Sniper Wolf, all of them.
You know what's cool?
What's that?
You tracking what comes out on my birthday this year?
Yes.
And
yes.
I'm excited, and I can't wait for Volume 2. I hope they announce Volume 2 in short order.
Oh yeah, they will. So once again, just talking about MGS Con, which is the Metal Gear Solid convention out in LA. Great thing. I have a couple of things put aside, maybe some autographed memorabilia, maybe some stickers and things. And so in future giveaways, some of that might get slid in. Somebody might end up with a poster signed by the entire cast that was there, which is incredible.
Nice.
Yeah. So very good. I've linked up with all of them on social media and everything. And so sporadically, I don't want to just have like an 8 straight weeks of Metal Gear Solid voices. But we'll be mixing them in the coming weeks and months.
Maybe a lead into the end of October when Volume 1 comes out.
Exactly.
That would be cool.
So, hey, the actual King Smith joining us from Kick. What's up, buddy? How you doing? So that's that. And to continue something I did from the last convention where I said, let's talk about who snubbed us, who didn't want to talk to CQ, who didn't want an interview. We're going to start naming names. That's what I'm going to start doing from now on. I'm going to start burning bridges. I can happily say that at this convention, we were snubbed 0 times.
Nice.
0 snubs. We were welcomed, graciously welcomed, and everybody was super, super nice. And we even raised a decent chunk of money for charity. I know I was helping organize a silent auction, which we had some really cool, unique items. One of them was even signed by Hideo Kojima himself, the legend behind, Metal Gear, Death Stranding, all these amazing things. So that was a cool item. There was, I mean, it's just a bunch of cool items. So we made
Nice.
a decent amount of money from the silent auction. There was a live stream going that raised, I think they said like $1,200
That's
from
pretty
a
cool,
live
yeah.
stream. And then a lot of the guests, donated for the VIP meet and greet. They donated their proceeds of that meet and greet to the organization as well. So I think we did a really, really good job raising some money
Weren't you
for.
like a VIP at this thing? Weren't you like
I
the
was
MC or something?
I was an ambassador. I was an
An
ambassador.
ambassador.
Yes.
Ambassador CQ.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
I'm pretty
From
sure
here-
that gives me immunity, diplomatic
Yes.
immunity.
Yes. From here on out, you need to address CQ as ambassador.
Ambassador CQ. That's right. All right. So that's that. Now to touch on kind of a, I don't want to say it's a downer, I guess, depending on how you look at it, but there's a lot going on in Hollywood right now, obviously. If you don't know, if you're not in the loop, which, again, that's okay. That's why you come to Pop Culture Warriors, to learn these things. Currently in Hollywood, the writers of Hollywood, the Writers Guild of America, WGA, has been on strike now 74, 75 days.
Yeah.
The Actors Guild, the Screen Actors Guild, has just joined in as of Thursday at midnight, Friday, basically.
Yeah,
As of
Friday
Friday,
morning, right?
they are striking as well. This is a historic moment. The last time the writers and actors were both on strike was about 63 years ago, 1960,
Yep.
which is incredible that they have waited this long. Now, each is done strikes in its own, its own times
Right.
individually, but the last time they were both on strike was that. And why that strike in particular was so pivotal and so crucial, and is the effects of it are still felt today. So at the time, little history lesson for you, at the time, there was no such thing as residuals. That didn't happen.
Right.
You got your day's wage, which was minimal back then, and that was it. Didn't matter if that show was the biggest hit of all time or never seen again. You got $0 from it post. Also, at the time, actors and writers and all these people had no benefits.
Right.
Zero
Healthcare.
benefits.
Yep,
They had to
no
pay out of
insurance.
pocket for their health care. So coming out of that strike, which I think lasted 6 months, I think that was a 6-month strike. Coming out of the strike is when residuals were introduced and healthcare was introduced. So before we dive further into this specific strike, I wanted to talk really quickly. I made a statement publicly, both on a live and I posted it, but basically saying, look, there's going to be a few changes around how we do things here. A large part of our show is interviews, right? I mean, sometimes 50% of the show is interviews. Also, convention coverage and private screenings, preview screenings of seeing movies and reviewing them before they even come out. It's a large chunk of what we do. That being said, I stand firmly, and so does WTF Nation Radio. I've talked with the team. We stand firmly with the writers and the actors and not the studios in this. And to do so is to follow what the SAG and WGA unions are asking. And so this is what's difficult about this situation. And a couple people have kind of already gotten called out about it. I'm not a writer of Hollywood. As much as I've tried, I'm not an actor of Hollywood, no matter how much I've tried. So the strike, in essence, like, I'm not on strike, right? I mean, that's the fact. But I would be, and I hate this term, but I would be what's considered content creator / influencer. Because when you have a crowd of people that are listening to what you're saying and listening to what you're doing and watching what you're doing, you have sway, you have influence. And whether or not I'm being paid to say it, when I do these things, I am promoting work. I'm promoting the studio's work. I'm promoting TV shows and promoting movies, regardless of if they're paying me or not. And something obviously that wasn't around in the 60s was the internet and things like social media influencers.
Right.
So it's a big change in how things are done. That being said, it's very clear when writers are on strike and when actors are on strike what they can and can't do. But there's been a little bit of consternation when it comes to what can influencers do? What can content creators do? And how does this affect what they do? So the SAG-AFTRA organization put out an FAQ for influencers. And influencers, they consider anyone with a social media presence, with followers ranging in the hundreds to the thousands to the millions, and don't necessarily need to be paid for the work that they do, which I fall into that category. So a couple questions that SAG had answered is, as an influencer, can I still do brand partnerships? Answer is yes. Influencers may still pursue commercial work, including influencer-generated brand deals. But, you know, you don't want to do that in pursuant to promoting something that the studio's done. So that's saying, like, if Nike offers me a deal to promote whatever, right? Under Armour, whoever, I can take that. That doesn't affect my brand partnerships, again, unless it's in a direct conflict with Sony Pictures, right? The next thing they answered was, can I promote screenings and content produced by struck companies? This is a pretty obvious one. Influencers should not accept any new work for promotion of struck companies or their content. Meaning, if Sony offers me tickets to go see XYZ event, even if I'm not going to cover it, even if I'm not, but that's the whole point, right? You go to these things to cover it. That's the social media age, right? If I didn't take pictures, It didn't happen. But they say, no, you should not do that. Although
so you shouldn't accept those tickets to Craven.
Yes, no, that was, I didn't need SAG to tell me that. What if, add it to the board, what if I'm under contract to promote a struck company's content? And this has nothing to do with me, but if an influencer is already under contract. So, for instance, Straw Hat Goofy, who's a very big movie reviewer on TikTok, he's currently in London promoting Mission Impossible. This is something he was contracted months ago to do. It is his responsibility and obligation to complete the contracted work as prescribed. After that, he should not accept any new work from these companies. And in fact, a good example of this, and very key, is they had the Oppenheimer premiere. The actors had to be there. They were contracted to be there prior to the strike. What they did, they walked the red carpet, they sat in their seats, and when the movie started, they got up and left. And that's the entire Oppenheimer cast. So that's everybody. Like, they've been doing the interviews because they have to. They've been doing the things because they have to. But like, their commitment ended the minute that screening started. And so they walked the carpet, they did the interviews, they sat down, movie started, they got up and walked out. Which
didn't Christopher Nolan make a comment like, that this is why they're doing it? They're, it's kind of like in solidarity.
Yep, exactly.
Like, hey, explained it.
That's exactly it, is that they are sticking to the strike rules, in that they weren't paid to see the movie. They were paid to be there, but they weren't paid to see the movie. So they went, they did the thing, and then they left. And he also said, Christopher Nolan said, I will not do, now that the movie is released, I will not be doing any work until the strike is over. And he's not even an actor or a writer, as a director. He said he's going to back them.
So, what's interesting? The Directors Guild, people have made comments like, where are these guys? Why aren't these guys and gals striking? In their contracts, they're not allowed to strike. Because if they strike, so Rob Deitch is directing Spider-Man 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I decide that I'm going to strike along with the actors and the writers. They can be like, all right, hey, dude, you're fired. CQ, you're the new director. Come in and take over directing Spider-Man 5.
Yep.
Even though the actors and the writers aren't going to be there, they can fire that director. So.
Yep, exactly.
I thought that was interesting.
So a couple more FAQs out of this. Am I allowed to promote struck work on social media as a fan and not in a paid capacity? Right? So if I go, man, I love that Mission Impossible movie, can I promote it on social media, even though I'm not being paid to do it? And it says influencers should refrain from posting on social media about any struck work, regardless of whether they are posting organically or in a paid capacity. So, again, they're not saying you can't, but they're basically asking you not to. And now here's one that I've been asked a couple times over the last couple days. Can I attend conventions as a fan as long as I'm not being paid to promote anything? Now, this got a little sticky because of the wording, but I'm going to explain it. It says you cannot participate in conventions such as Comic-Cons on behalf of or to promote companies we are striking against. This includes appearances, panels, fan meet and greets, etc. involving struck work. You may participate in a convention in ways that are wholly independent of characters from struck work or sponsorships by struck companies. Basically, what they're saying is you can go to a convention as a fan. You shouldn't be if let's say San Diego Comic-Con, a couple days away, if I want to go to San Diego Comic-Con as a fan, I can do that. I should not be participating in anything that revolves around the struck company. So if there's a panel for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I should not go to that. I should not promote that. But if I want to go get an autograph from my favorite actor, that's fine because you are, as a person, going to see another person and getting their work.
Well, there was questions brought up talking about San Diego Comic-Con. The Masters of the Universe Revolutions panel. The new, the next season of the Netflix He-Man show. All the actors or voice actors have left. There's only 2 people left. A representative or somebody from Mattel, the historian or whatever, the Bible keeper for Motu, and then Kevin Smith. And they were like, wait a minute. Kevin Smith is in SAG and he's in the Writers Guild. Like, what the, nope, because he's in the capacity of
producer.
Yeah, producer,
Executive
senior producer or whatever. But
Yeah.
everybody else has walked from it, and sounds like, it's Kevin Smith, so he's going to be able to make up the difference. But, I don't know. It just sounds like they just took all the air out of the room.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to the actual San Diego Comic-Con of it all. But I really wanted to understand, and explain and be on the same page with the audience is just as far as what this strike means and what does it represent. So a couple quick notes. The unions, both the Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Guild, they're seeking a fair share of the revenue generated specifically by streaming services. Because the way it's always worked is you got paid for the work you did. Nobody's arguing that, even as little as it is. And then you would get residuals every time that movie or TV show aired. Very simple. There were guys that were on like episodes of like Friends, which aired repeated. You can get $400, $600, $800 checks, from the residuals of the shows that you were on. And over time, as you build a catalog, those checks compile. What happened is when the new model became digital and streaming, the company that holds the license is selling that license to something like Netflix or Hulu or whoever, and the money is paid from, let's say, Netflix to Sony. I'm just picking on Sony today. So Sony says, we're going to license to you Morbius, for God's sakes, for however much that's worth. So the money gets paid as a license holder to Sony. Doesn't matter if Morbius is seen 80 bajillion times on the streaming service.
Yeah.
The money that trickles down to those that participated is like literal cents. For instance, there's a real world example. Netflix original, Orange is the New Black.
Right.
One of the main actresses, it was an ensemble cast, but one of the main actresses literally showed where she was in hundreds of episodes, and her residual check was $8.27.
How?
right?
How?
When it was one of the big, it was literally the number one show on Netflix for like 4 years.
Yeah,
So that's what they're fighting for. That's
absolutely.
the main thing they're fighting for. The union argues that streaming services pay actors and writers much less than traditional media platforms, and that they should receive residuals based on a percentage of revenue, not a flat fee. The AMPTP, that's the people that represent the studios, has
Right.
offered an increase to increase the residuals for streaming services by 26%, but the union says that's still insufficient and does not reflect the true value of their work.
The
Go ahead.
the other problem I heard is these streaming services never tell the exact numbers of
Exactly.
how the number of times it's been streamed, and it always seems to be lowballed,
Mm-hmm.
and it's probably attributed to this. But and it's
Yep.
straight garbage, man.
Yep.
It-
And so here's a couple of other points. The union also demands better working conditions and health benefits for actors and writers,
Mhm.
especially in light of COVID-19 pandemic. The union wants to reduce the hours and days of work, increase the minimum wages and overtime rates, improve the safety and hygiene protocols, and expand the coverage and eligibility of health insurance. There was one actor I saw, he was talking about, he goes, I was on one of the biggest shows, or he was a writer on one of the
Mhm.
biggest shows at the time. He was like, we were top 3 show on TV.
Yeah.
Because of the way they structured time, he was actually only writing 3 months out of the year for that show. Even though the show, was a yearly show, he only
Right.
actually worked 3 months out of the year, didn't qualify for health insurance. Even though it was one of the biggest shows on TV.
And they also do these what are they calling them? These micro writing rooms
Yes.
and whatnot.
Yes.
And it's a normal show used to have, like, I don't know, 10, 20 so odd writers, and now they've cut it down to a fraction of that, like,
Mhm.
I don't know, say
Yeah.
4 writers,
They
and
get
they're
these mini writing camps.
mini
Yeah.
writing rooms. That's what it
Yeah.
is. Yes, thank you.
Yep.
It's-
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Now the last big sticky point, and again, it's much more than this. I'm kind of generalizing the
Mhm.
big pocket items. The union is also seeking protections, and this is huge, for actors and writers in the era of artificial intelligence, which can be used to manipulate voices, images, and performances without consent. The union wants to have the right to approve or reject any use of their likeness or voice in any media platform and to receive compensation for any such use.
What was it? There was a
This
show.
this
Go
was
ahead. Sorry.
crazy when it was announced, because before the contract talks broke down, the SAG guys came out and said, you know what was on the last proposal? The union, the studios want the ability, this is in their proposal, they want the ability to pay a background actor, anyone less than like ensemble cast, main star,
Mhm.
co-star, like backgrounds, extras, they want the ability to pay them $200 for their day work, one day
Right.
work, $200, scan them,
Right.
and then be able to use their likeness in perpetuity forever without having to pay them or ask permission to use their
Yeah.
likeness.
That I think it was the show Snowpiercer. Uh, they were the cast and extras were called in one day, and they were told that, like, hey, the studio needs to scan you for blah 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 reasons to fix things in post, and then they found out later they were going to be able to do exactly what you just described and create scenes and create background characters without needing the actual actors there and or pay them.
Yeah.
um, you know, I think I hate to say it, the biggest violator and the one that opened Pandora's box is Lucasfilm. When they did Rogue One with Carrie Fisher's character
Mm-hmm.
and Grand Moff Tarkin,
Yeah,
Peter,
Tarkin. Yeah. Yep. I know
and
exactly what you mean.
then they did it again with, well, Mark Hamill did sell his likeness and his voice to Disney. That was
Mhm.
like 2 years ago. But and
I
then
know.
most recently with Obi-Wan, they used a Ukrainian company to recreate James Earl Jones's voice to do good old Darth Vader.
Mm-hmm.
Goddamn Bob Iger, that guy.
I mean, it's it's like, so here's what bothered me the most about it, because I was like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, why did the talks break down? Was it really, you know, or there was a comment from Bob Iger. Speaking of Bob Iger, he made the comment about how, like, you know, it's basically disgusting what these people want, and it's, you know, it's ridiculous, and you know, we're losing all this money, and so I said, you know what, I'm gonna take the time. I want to break this down. I read the union documents. I read the
Yeah.
proposals. I looked at the money trail because I wanted to see who's being honest, who's full of it. So this
Yeah.
is what I found. This is, and you're gonna find this interesting. So how much
Mm-hmm.
money? Let's specifically, let's look at the Writers Guild. The Writers Guild.
Mm-hmm.
How much money do they want? What is it that they really are asking for? So in the proposed deal, this is what's currently proposed that was already snuffed out by the studios. But in that proposed deal, it would cost the studios an estimated $430 million every year. Now,
Mm-hmm.
you go, well, shit, that's a lot of money. 430 million a year. That's a lot of money.
Not
It,
comparatively.
I know, but it is. Let's just objectively,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of money.
Sure.
But what is glanced over is that is for all of Hollywood increase.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, then they break it down. You can actually break this down. For the individual studios,
Yeah.
it would cost Disney $75 million. That's it. A year to settle that. It would cost Netflix $68 million, Warner Brothers $47 million, Paramount $45 million, NBC Universal $34, Amazon $32, Sony $25, and Apple TV $17 million. When you look at these companies that are in the billions of dollars in profit, asterisk, in profit, meaning that is after they've paid all the salaries, after they've paid all the work, they are billions of dollars in profit. So to say Disney can't squeaks out 75 million and Netflix 68 million and Discovery 47 and Paramount 45, yeah.
I'm just gonna say, it's funny. I've heard this argument somewhere before. I
Mm-hmm.
can't put my yes, I can. Congress and the service member. How much a service member, regardless of said rank of time in service, how much they make versus what the people in Capitol Hill are making, and you sit there. This is exactly that same argument. The difference is, a lot of us say, yeah, it would be nice to be paid more, but I do this for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
To
I've heard this argument, and
to
good
take it
luck.
home,
God bless them.
to sell the point, to take it home, I looked at the numbers. Net income or gross
Yeah.
income, whichever is the after everything, gross income
Gross.
to the amount that is being asked of them individually.
Mhm.
For Disney, that would approximately, that would be 0.2% of its annual income. So not a percent, 0.2 of a percent, a 20th of a percent.
Yeah.
When you're looking at who else? Netflix, 0.1. Warner Brothers, 0.18. Like, we're talking a percentage of a percentage. A fraction of a percentage is what these people are asking to be paid fairly and justly. And the studios were like, fuck that.
Here's the thing. I've already heard what some of their plans are. You know what Disney's plan? I got a hard on for Disney.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go
I don't
for
like
it.
Disney. But you know what Disney's plan is right now?
Mm-hmm. Wait them out.
So wait them out. One, Bob Iger has said, and I'm not quoting, but he basically said, "Hey, we're going to wait them out until the people start losing their homes."
Mm-hmm.
You know, freaking Emperor Palpatine. Two, when Disney runs out of content because they've expended everything they've already filmed. One, there's a proposal to start re-releasing old movies back into theater, like all the classic animated stuff, maybe the original Star Wars trilogy, maybe some original Indiana Jones movies, the things that they know they're going to sell, that's going to cause pennies on the dollar to market and put back in the theater. And then 3, to put stuff on Disney Plus. They're talking about going overseas, kind of like what they're already doing with Bluey, going to Korea and getting Korean dramas, otherwise known as K dramas, and throwing them up on Disney Plus
Mm-hmm.
and start filling the content. And here's the problem.
I mean, that's what Netflix did. Where do you think Squid
Well,
Games came
but
from?
Netflix has always been doing that for
Yeah.
years. But because my wife watches that stuff, that's the only reason I know that. But here's a couple of hot takes that I've got. One, I think a lot of Americans, unless they're people like you and I, don't care because
Mhm.
they've got more important problems. They got to go spend $4 for a loaf of bread, $6 for a gallon of milk, $12 for a carton of eggs. Right? I got my own problems. You guys, because they all perceive everybody in Hollywood lives in a freaking mansion, and you guys off in your mansion have your own stupid problems. Go kiss my 4th point of contact. 2, they're gonna freaking, if their favorite show is postponed or indefinitely, canceled, they're just gonna go find something else to watch.
Mm.
And I'll tell you this right now. I thought about this today because I had to drive about an hour and a half to go do some stuff. You know what? Here's the funny part. This writer strike and the actor strike, it doesn't really affect me. Why? Because right now I'm only watching 2 shows. And I've made the decision I'm not watching those shows anymore until this shit's over. Guess what I do when I'm not doing this?
Mm.
I'm on YouTube, man. I'm watching content creators, and mostly it is talking about the stupidity going on in Hollywood and then military historicals type stuff.
Mm.
And those content creators, they put out some good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
There was a, I think it was Mark Ruffalo had tweeted out where he was like,
yeah,
because somebody was like, well, how are people going to do stuff and whatever. And basically his comment was like, all of us actors should just start doing indies. Let's find an indie director, find a script that you like, do it for, peanuts on the dollar. And then, yeah, I know, I had the same thought. And then, when it becomes huge, these studios are going to want it and they're not going to be able to get it and all that. But I thought that was a cool idea. Like, but again,
throw it up on YouTube
you
for free.
Yeah, you want these people on the picket lines right now. If they're out there working, it's not going to have the same effect. But so,
Or
go ahead.
wouldn't can't the studios turn around and go get some scabs and start?
They can, but I mean, it's going to be it's going to be a bad look, and B, whoever scabs will never work in the business a day in their lives after the strike's over, which eventually it will.
Yeah.
So, there's that. So really quickly, because we're getting close to the top of the hour, I wanted to talk about how this impacts the show.
Go for it.
Obviously, we've always traditionally done an hour of news like we're doing, and then an hour interview. So for the first hour, how it's going to change is I will not be talking about current, past, present, or future projects in regards to movies, in regards to TV, really in regards to anything that is work, is product off the back of these writers and these actors. So while that might seem very limiting, we talk pop culture here. There's a large swath, a large spectrum of topics we can discuss. Everything from toys to comics to video games,
comics,
collectibles. I mean, there's a massive selection of things we can talk about. So that'll be that.
There's some great video games that are coming out.
Card games, board games, video games, all of it. Then in regards to the interview segments, I will not, out of solidarity, I will not be interviewing actors and writers because I don't want to put them in a position where they have to talk about their work. And the whole point is that they are striked from their work. And at first I was really torn about it because I'm like, I feel like that's a punishment to the actors. Like they don't get their promotion. They don't get, whatever. But again, I'm just following SAG rules, even though I'm not a SAG member. they're not to talk about their work and things. So, I mean, I could technically bring someone on and be like, so what do you like to do in your downtime? But I feel like that's doing them a disservice. So I did have a few interviews that were currently scheduled. I've reached out to everyone and I've told them, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to support their business and their industry. And so we're going to pause those interviews. That being said, I'm still going to be doing interviews like I'm doing tonight in the realm of video games. And we have some very cool, interesting interviews lined up in other areas of pop culture that I still think will bring really good content and enjoyment to the viewer. You look like you want to say something.
I got an idea.
Okay. You want to share or you want to save it?
Oh, no, I'm going to share. Instead of getting enough people on your Patreon to get those stupid freaking Apple freaking googly eye things, how about we get enough Patreon supporters? You get a PS5 and you play Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and then Spider-Man 2.
I mean,
Yes,
I'm all for
and
it.
then you review it.
I'm all for it because I think that's what they're missing is my review of the Spider-Man video game.
In fact, if you buy the PS5, I'll buy you the game. How about that?
Sure. Sounds good.
You let me know when you get the PS5 and I'll forward you the game.
Fair enough. So that was the interviews. In regard, just to finish out that point, in regards to other ways it's going to affect my content, I won't be going to any screenings of the movies provided by the studios. I'm full transparency kind of guy. I'm going to go see certain movies that I want to go see, but I will not post about them. I will not write about them. I will not review them. I will not go from studio provided, things. If I'm going, I'm going to pay my money and it'll be, really to support the theaters. And again, the content that these people put out. And then lastly, obviously conventions. I've been really torn about whether I should or should not do conventions. And the way that I'm going to do it, again, kind of expressly follows the SAG guidelines in that I'm going to go to a convention, but I won't be promoting any part of it that would be studio work. So if I'm going, it won't be doing interviews, obviously, but it'll be going to check out the vendors, check out the cosplayers, show the experience, the toys, and things like that. But it won't be to show any promotion to any of the work that the studios are doing until the strike is resolved. And so, and it will stay that way until there's a fair deal struck by the unions and the studios, because it's not fair. Like, the whole point of this show was to celebrate everything we love in movies and TV and games and comics, and for them to blood, sweat, and tears literally be, you hear, I've been watching these things and you hear stories about people that are like, I was on the #1 show on Netflix and I still had a day job, or a night job actually, because she was a bartender, to support, to pay her rent. That's garbage. For people that are getting confused and going, oh, the rich just need to be richer. Like, we're not talking about the Tom Cruises, the Brad Pitts, the Leo DiCaprios of the world. SAG and WGA represents 170,000 people in the industry. And outside of that top 1%, the rest of them have to do like multiple jobs and have multiple credits at a time to have a livable wage.
That's garbage, man.
It's crazy.
It's garbage. It is absolutely garbage.
It's absolutely garbage. One of the actors, from The Office, one of the biggest shows in the world, the guy that played Pam's original boyfriend, he was the asshole. He was talking about it. He goes, doing that show, I still didn't have enough to qualify for health insurance.
God.
Doing The Office, one of the biggest shows of all time.
Here, this. Don't take this the wrong way. This is just a hot take.
Mm-hmm.
You know who needs to strike when the iron's hot? The DOD. They need to set up they need to send all recruiters to Hollywood right now because they just reactivated the IIR,
Mm-hmm.
the inactive reserve.
Mm-hmm.
Screw that. Just send all recruiters to Hollywood and start recruiting these actors and these writers and all these other people, and then we'll solve two problems with one stone. I can hear it now. Ice is gonna be mocking me on Thursday.
So that's the pitch. Is the recruiters they're on the picket line going, I hear the Army's got good health insurance.
Yeah.
It's
B,
like, wait a minute, this guy's not one of us.
B.
He's like rips open the shirt instead of it being like the mic. You know what I mean? Like it's dog tags. He's like, yeah, he's one of them. He's an undercover.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's a hot take for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. So so moving forward, I feel like it's my responsibility as the captain of this ship to ensure that I bring good quality, fun, engaging content, regardless of the limitations that are set forth. So I will continue to bring fun stories we can talk about, interactive things we can do, interviews where I can, and on days we can't, we're gonna play games. We're gonna do giveaways. We're gonna have. I want to start doing like meme contests. I'll put up a picture and you just meme the hell out of it, and we'll do things like that.
What about some of your comedian friends?
I could, yeah. Back in the day, for those that have been around long enough, the first 6 months to a year, I used to play clips from my comedian friends, doing their local, their little local gigs. Again, nobody famous or anything, but just local comedians that I knew, veterans that were also comedians, and spotlighting them. I could do that. Yeah, we can go back to doing that to comedians and all these. So, yeah, man. I'm 100% for it. We are going to definitely, kick it up a notch and figure out fun ways that we can keep this thing going.
I could start doing like a 5-minute, toy review, like the new Rebel Indoor Trooper. I got in today. I could review it.
Yeah. Which, by the way, you should already be doing that and just posting it to Pop Culture Warrior.
Okay, then I will figure out how to do it, and I just got a whole mess load of stuff. And I've got stuff coming in, and
should already be doing that. That's the thing.
Yeah, I'll get on that.
Thank you. We'll talk on the side. We'll talk that out.
Yeah.
So one last thing. We got a couple minutes now before the top of the hour. So this is, I wanted to say how it relates into something like San Diego Comic-Con, which is literally days away. Mm-hmm. So obviously, as of Friday last week, SAG after has completely shut down. They've shut down filming, scripted TV, productions, movies, everything. Now, under the union strike rules, SAG after members, and this represents again 160,000 people, are not permitted to promote the movies or shows at premieres, red carpets, or even Comic-Cons. So this is a direct quote. In general terms, any kind of promotion of any project that was made under the television theatrical agreements, either current or past, will not be allowed. This is from the National Executive Director and Chief Negotiator of SAG-AFTRA. He also said Comic-Con, festivals, panels, social media, or premieres or promotion in any form is not allowed. It also doesn't allow for any forms of promotion for television or streaming series produced under the contract that expired Thursday. Actors who were nominated at the 2023 Emmys on Wednesday will not be able to campaign or otherwise promote those projects for the duration of the strike, which will bring any actor participation in any campaign to a close until the agreements are reached. Lastly, they noted that the union members continue to be allowed to participate in autograph signings or events that are not related to specific companies or projects. So I don't want people going like, fucking Chris Evans is at New York Comic-Con, fucking scab. Like, no, he's allowed to appear as Chris Evans and sign as Chris Evans, but he is not allowed to be at a panel talking about Captain America and the Marvel projects or any of the other shows he's done or any other movies he's done. So there will not be any interviews, there will not be panels, anything promoting TV or shows. And I said this earlier, in the first sign of solidarity, the cast of Chris Nolan's Oppenheimer, including Cillian Murphy, Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Florence Pugh, and Robert Downey Jr. himself, walked out of the film's London premiere that was happening concurrent with the strike. Relating to specifically to San Diego Comic-Con, Disney's Marvel Studios is completely skipping Comic-Con. It will not be previewing its upcoming movie and TV slate at Hall H, although Marvel Comics will be in appearance and they'll host panels and other special events, which is fine because that's the comic side of the house. As will Warner Brothers Discovery's DC Comics will also be there. Other studios to back out of this year's convention include Netflix, Sony, and Universal Pictures. The only major studio still holding out to possibly appear is Paramount and Warner Brothers, because they're really killing it nowadays with that DC slate. So in essence, I mean, what is there going to be to do at San Diego Comic-Con this year? Maybe check out some of the gaming booths and toys.
Comics. Maybe go see about comics.
What is this comic thing you're talking about? I don't believe I've heard of comics.
Books with pictures and word bubbles and words and like all these movies that MCU is based off of, like 60 pushing 70 years worth of history.
Do you speak of the old text? You speak of the before times.
Yes, the times when people still read these things instead of
You speak of the archives.
Yes,
old...
when they were still actually good. Speaking of comic books, have you seen what they've done to our boy Peter?
Oh yeah, there's so much.
Oh my God, Mary Jane, what a hussy.
All right, guys. Well, that brings us to the top of the hour. I'm going to toss us to a break. Hopefully, we'll have a guest. Let's just say
if not, you'll have to deal with me.
It was a short turnaround when this guest reached out and was like, "I want to come on." We'll see what happens. But with that, we're going to toss to a quick break. When we come back, either there'll be an interview or there'll be more of us. It's a surprise. So
I'll be here.
Stay tuned and we'll see. All right. I'm going to toss to a short break and we'll be back with more right after this. Shots.
You're listening to the sounds of WTF Nation Radio.
Hey, you there? Yeah, it is right, you. Let me ask you something, alright? Where the hell do you think that you're going? Oh, would you think because the show is going to commercial that means you get to just walk away? Well, CQ asked me to pass on the little message, alright? And it says, I'll be back.
After all I've done, do you love me now? Do you love me now? After all I've said, running through your head, do you love me now? Do you love me told you everything, I bet you cry and run away. told you everything, I wonder if you would believe that with all the ways you've tried, I couldn't change my selfish needs. And with endless love from you, I took for granted everything, and I deserve to be alone here with me. After all I've done, do you love me now? Do you love me now? After all I've said, running through your head, do you love me now? Do you love me now? And I believe I could close my eyes and make it go away in dreams. And honestly, I could die to take it all away from me. After all I've done, do you love me now? Do you love me now? After all I've said, running through your head, do you love me now? Do you love me now? After all I've done, do you love me now? After all I've said, running through your head, do you love me
You're watching Pop Culture Warrior. The force is strong. They have the high ground.
Broadcasting live from the basement of the Pentagon. This is WTF Nation Radio.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to Pop Culture Warrior. It is that time of the evening. One of my favorite things to do is obviously talk to new and interesting people. My second favorite thing to do is to return people, which we never get to do, it seems like. So, in return, my guest tonight is a true titan of the industry, a visionary artist who's left an indelible mark, and I'm reading the notes from the last person. That is not... I'm gonna start that over because that is not the notes I had for this show. Where did my notes go? I don't know how I lost them. Regardless, we have joining us just a phenomenal guy. This man has been working in the industry for years. He is the CEO of Victura Games. I'm gonna go with because I don't want to sound like an idiot. He's the force behind the recently released huge hit 6 Days in Fallujah. We're not going to waste any time, guys. Let's just dive right into it. Please welcome to the show, Peter Tamte. Yay!
Thanks.
Thank
you.
I had this
I like
wonderful
the title of
intro.
industry part better though.
I mean, you are. Let's be real. You are.
Where's he going with this?
You've been around. Not to date anyone here, but you have been around for quite a while. You have, such an incredible career. You've been. I did the homework. You've been involved in so many huge franchises, big hit games. There's so much we can talk about. And in our last interview, we did all the background. So now I feel like this is an opportunity for us to really dig into the material. So just as a reminder, if you can give a quick rundown of some of the properties you've worked on and how you've gotten to your position in the industry that you're in today.
Sure. Yeah. Well, my career goes back about 30 years or so. I built a Macintosh software company called Macsoft. We grew that to be the largest Macintosh consumer software publisher in the world. That got Steve Jobs' attention, and he asked me to run worldwide consumer marketing, senior director of consumer marketing for Apple. Did that through the turnaround. Then a couple buddies of mine who had built a company called Bungie asked me to join them at Bungie, help them as executive vice president at Bungie. Sold that company to Microsoft partway through so they could make a game called Halo. Release a game called Halo. And then I started another business called Destineer. As part of the work at Destineer, which has led us to the conversation we're having tonight, we published video games around the world and also had a business building training systems for the Marine Corps and for the intelligence community. And as part of that work, I got to know a lot of the guys who were getting deployed back and forth because they'd be sent to our office to become subject matter experts, and then they'd vanish for a few months and then they'd come back, right? And I got to know a bunch of these guys really, really well. And that is what led to 6 Days in Fallujah, the product we're talking about now. Yeah.
So exciting. So let's, before we dive into the game proper, I want to ask a couple questions that kind of were on my mind. I was sitting back and I was thinking about, the industry at large, the military's role in games, and obviously it's a pop culture show. So, pop culture in the military and then pop culture in gaming and just really kind of kicking around these concepts. So let's start out with, what are some of the main challenges and opportunities for a company like Victura in the current gaming market?
Well, I guess it depends. There's when I think about the industry, you have multiple tiers of game companies. You've got the really big game companies like Activision, or should we call them Microsoft?
Mm-hmm.
And you've got and EA, Ubisoft, all these guys that are AAA big companies making big budget games that cost $200-300 million to make, each of them, but are very, very big projects. You've got a tier below that. We call it AA tier. And that's budgets that are less than $300 million or $200 million, but are still high production values, high expectations from consumers, very emotionally deep experiences, certainly. And that's the tier that we're trying to compete in. And then you've got the, A, B, indie studios below that are making games with smaller budgets, anywhere from a few $100,000 to $5-10 million or something like that. And you could expect that typically the sales for those games correspond with those kinds of budgets. The ones that are costing $200 or $300 million are generating hundreds of millions of dollars or even billions of dollars in revenue. The ones that cost a few $100,000 typically generate a few $100,000 to $1 million or $2 million in revenue. And then you've got the breakouts from that indie group. So every once in a while, one of those indie teams will release a game that may have only cost them a few $100,000 or $1 million to make, but sell 6, 7, 8 million units,
Right.
all $30, $40 a piece, or something like that, with very, very small team. So it's kind of hard to say, hey, this budget is going to result in these kinds of sales. Generally, it's true. And so when you think of what is the opportunity for game company, well, it really varies, because you got some of the small guys that are just doing incredible traction with their games. And then you've got some of the really big guys like Activision or Microsoft or EA releasing big games that don't get that kind of traction as well. So all over the board.
No, you say these things, I think of like Among Us being one of those games that came out of nowhere.
7 million units in like a month.
Yeah. And then on the flip side of that, like you were saying, you got your Cyberpunk, which billions of dollars in production, it seems like, and then didn't do so well. Struggled.
They had some pickup. Yeah, they had some. Yeah, which they, to their credit, are like, we're not giving up. We're going to come right back. We're going to fix the things that people are complaining about, and we're going to come back stronger than ever. I give them credit for coming back in round 2.
We already got people in the comments like calling out Battlefield 2042, Redfall. Like they're saying it. It's not for me. It's not from Peter. It's just people just throwing things out there. Just saying.
It can happen. It can happen.
It
can definitely happen. And if I could say this in defense of every video game company, having been in the business for a long, long time, the complexity of making games has gone up so extremely high. We're dealing with, very, very high consumer expectations. Because what happens is when somebody like Activision ships Call of Duty and it generates $3 billion in revenue, the mandate from the management team at Activision is not, hey, I don't want you to spend, $325 million. Make sure, your budget's 300. Don't go over $300 million, right? Mm-hmm. The mandate is this is a $3 billion franchise, don't screw it up, right? So that means then that the production quality goes up, and that affects everybody across the entire industry because it raises consumer expectations. We found with our game, for example, players are having a hard time distinguishing the fact that, well, we got 50 people working on this game, and Activision has 1,000 people working on Call of Duty, but yet the expectations are very, very high for what we can do with those 50 people.
Exactly. And I'm curious, I don't want to get too much into like, let's say, profit margins and the minutia, the financials, but I know, as a guy who's really into the industry and I love reading about this stuff and playing games, especially, I'm a gamer, we've seen the cost associated for the industry, it grows, right? Because now you need HD, and then now you need 4K, and now you need all these different play modes, and so the price it costs to make a game goes up, and yet for what seems like ever, price points have been $60 a game. So like I'm sure that is a different type of struggle on that maybe the consumer doesn't see, but from your side of the business, it's something to really a challenge to contend with.
Absolutely, the game budgets are soaring through the roof. In order to do anything that looks anything reasonably close to those big AAA games, it takes a lot of craftsmen working very, very hard. Those people, it takes a lot of them They all have to get paid, and the budgets just keep going up and up and up. That's absolutely true. Now, fortunately, we're seeing that the sales for games that can really hit it are also higher than they used to be. So the bargain that we're making isn't necessarily that it's going to crunch the margin. The bargain is that more people are going to buy the game if we invest this additional money in it.
Right. If you put the money where it needs to be in the right places, and you hit that sweet spot, you're gonna see a lot of return. Question from Phil in the chats. This is, I guess, a Bungie question. How fast did Bungie get to AAA? Was it after Myth, or was it Halo 1?
Well, I would definitely call Bungie a AAA developer at the Myth and Myth 2 phase, even probably Marathon before that. It was definitely Bungie, and I've just, in fairness, I joined Bungie after they had already built Marathon and Myth, so I can't take any credit for the successes of those games. But they had in the Macintosh games market, and then of course in the Windows market as well with Myth, they definitely had established themselves as a AAA company, a AAA independent game studio. So yeah, I'd call them AAA at that phase, even though they were an independent AAA company. It was a little bit easier in those days to be an independent AAA company, just from the sense that there wasn't such a huge gap in the budget between what a smaller team could do. But what Bungie did, it's just amazing. Alex Seropian is still a friend of mine. He's the CEO of Bungie, and he and Jason Jones, when they were building the company, did this remarkable job of bringing in an incredible amount of talent into the company. They were very particular about who they wanted on the team, and they were able to assemble this group of people who were truly innovators and just remarkably talented in each of their areas. And that is absolutely one of the reasons why Halo did what it did.
Fantastic. Now you've been in the video game industry over 2 decades, and worked on, like we talked about, some of the most influential games of all time, from Halo, Age of Empires, Unreal Tournament, all these things.
Yep, sure.
How do you see the evolution of video games as a medium and as a form of art, really? How does that relate in terms of like the pop culture of it all?
Right. Well, and that gets into what we're trying to do with 6 Days in Fallujah. I think that we have an opportunity with video games to help people understand events and people in ways that can only be understood through interactivity, by actually trying to be those people. It is one thing to watch somebody on a TV or a movie screen, try to overcome a particular challenge. But when you are the person who has to overcome that challenge for yourself, you naturally understand that situation much, much better than if you'd watch somebody else solve that challenge for you. So I think the real opportunity for video games, and the one that we're specifically targeting here with what we're trying to do with 6 Days in Fallujah, is to say, let's take important world events, things that shaped the way our lives work today, and put players inside of those situations to understand what really happened. In the case of 6 Days in Fallujah, it's the Battle of Fallujah is in many ways a microcosm of what had happened during the entire time period, and very reflective of just the general challenges of trying to overcome an insurgency inside of a city. These are lessons that seem like they have to get relearned over and over again by society across centuries. And von Clausewitz talked about it 250 years ago. And when we think about Fallujah and 6 Days in Fallujah, our goal is to put players in that specific situation so that they can understand concepts like friction, the friction of war. They can understand why no plan survives contact with the enemy. They can understand some of these concepts that the military leaders have been trying to get the political leaders and the general population to understand for literally centuries. But when you play this game, even for just a few hours, you begin to understand the truths of what they've been trying to say for all these centuries, because you are the one who had to solve it, and you couldn't solve it without these compromises or these challenges.
Yeah. The proof's in the pudding. I love what you were saying too, because there's a famous, what was it, Mike Tyson's quote, that everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? You know, like that's combat in a nutshell, man. We drew up all these diagrams. Look, Article 15-21, like in this diagram, it shows, like, no, when shit hits the fan, you make it work, or you don't.
That's exactly right. And when you think about how are people's perceptions of combat shaped? Most people who haven't actually been there. And some people might get the opportunity to hear stories from a friend who served, or maybe they'll see a story in a newspaper. But by and large, people's ideas about combat are shaped through mass media, through film, through games. And in most of those cases, those films and games are in most cases, glamorizing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right? And so we started with this premise of realism and trying to give players a really difficult challenges that force them to use real tactics, to really work with their teammates, to and the only way you can do that is by making it very difficult for them to be solo. Right. So if you play as a lone wolf in 6 Days in Fallujah, you will not get far. You must work with your team. And it's interesting because we'll watch players. I mean, we tested this ahead of time, right? With consumers, we bring 4 Call of Duty players in and let them play the game. And of course, all 4 start the game by running off in 4 different directions. Exactly. And then they come back, and they last 30 seconds, right? They come back, and then, you know, they try it again, but they're a little bit more cautious in their movement, but they're still doing four different people doing 4 different things. Mm-hmm. But eventually, by the 4th or 5th try, somebody in the group will always say, hey, you know, do you think we ought to stick together and talk to each other about the threat? It happens every time. And then when that actually happens, all of a sudden you see that little, you know, that little unit start to gel and start to work together, and then they start to go through. And then what we found, which is I think just one of the most interesting things as the game has shipped, is we're finding that experience of struggling and then overcoming a difficult challenge together brings people closer together. And so we're seeing relationships develop through the game across the country, across the world, because these 4 people went through a difficult situation together and solved that challenge together. Yeah.
That's, I mean, that having played it, yes. Having lived it and having played it, yes. I'm just going to say yes. We do have some really great questions from Greg and Scott. I'm going to get to those guys. Hang on. Don't think I didn't see it. But I feel like that's a later discussion, but I do want to get to that. I'll circle back. But Phil says, yes, this will help people to describe to their friends like, hey, you know, our friend Mike, he was in Iraq. Now you know why he acts the way he does. Now you know why he's a little, he's a little skittish. And then from Angry Elf in the chat, he says, the enemy always gets a vote. We were talking about, right. The fight and how things work. Exactly. Yep. So before we dive fully into the game, I want to ask you kind of on a larger sense, what are some of the ethical and kind of social implications when you're creating a game that depicts real world conflicts and events?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question that we've struggled with for the 15 years or so that since the game was originally proposed to me by a Marine who was in Fallujah. Yeah, I mean, so there's some things that there are some lines we don't cross, I guess, right? One of the things that I don't think our world is ready for is for us to recreate the death of a real person. I mean, we wouldn't do that unless this is something that their parents, for example, really wanted us to do, and that hasn't been a request so far.
Yeah.
So so I think, so when you think about ethical challenges, I think that's one of them. Instead, in the game, their friends describe their sacrifice instead of us recreating that in gameplay, because we still also want to recognize and not forget about the people who did that. I mean, after all, keep in mind, one of the reasons why this game started was because this Marine friend of mine, Eddie Garcia, Marine Sergeant, told me stories of things that had happened during the battle that I hadn't heard. And I was embarrassed that I hadn't heard them. And I thought if I hadn't heard them, a lot of other people hadn't heard them. And so one of our goals is to tell these stories because of the remarkable things that so many of these Marines and soldiers did during that battle. So when you say ethical, that's one of the ethical concerns we've got. The second one I think that we're very mindful of is what are the lessons that people are going to take away from this? And that is where the realism comes in. And, one of the things that has been interesting to us as we've watched and listened to comments from people who played the game both before we shipped it in user testing and then now is, we want it to be difficult. We want it to be very, very difficult because we want to drive home that reality. And we hear from players who have not been exposed to combat before in a realistic way over and over again say, wow, that's harder than I thought, or that is, I wouldn't want to have been there. I've heard that an awful lot, a lot of additional respect for the people who were put into that situation. So the experience that we create must mechanically stimulate particular emotions. And those emotions must be consistent with what the Marines and soldiers who were actually in that scenario told us they experienced. That's hard to do. That is actually very, very hard to do. But that is something I think that we're getting right so far.
Right. Man, so much of what you talked about too is it makes so much sense and it really hits home for me. First, the idea of the sacrifices that so many men and women have made and not glorifying it, but honoring it and respecting it is such a huge part and something that, maybe Hollywood doesn't quite get the right message across sometimes. And it's also something like this, I feel, having gotten to play it and see it and watch it kind of develop over the years, because I've been such a fan of it since it was first announced like a decade ago, is this idea that, even for all the true stuff that gets put out, so your Black Hawk Down, your American Sniper, Lone Survivor, all those things that are based on reality, I feel like it tells the story of the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, right? It's the Navy SEAL, it's the Green Beret, it's the, these guys that they do exist. These are real people, but it's not the experience of 99.9% of us veterans. Sure. It's not our experience. Sure. Myself as a combat Army infantry airborne combat guy, I saw some shit. I did some shit. Yeah. But by no means did I deal anything like what those guys were dealing with. And so a game like this has the opportunity to show it as it is, as it was for a lot of us that were in those situations. So yeah. I think it's a hard thing to do, but I mean, from all my friends, from my opinion, you guys nailed it. You did a really great job.
Thank you. It truly means the world to us to hear that. It is central to why we're doing it, and to get that validation back that we got that right. What you just said, I guarantee is going to get spread across our entire development team tomorrow.
I'm honored. So like from Angry Elf, he says, this game is the Band of Brothers of the GWAT era. So that's high praise. That's high praise. Although Scott wants to counter, he says, if you wanted to give the experience I'm paraphrasing, but if you want to give the experience of 99%, you're gonna have to do a game where there are cooks and mechanics. So, is that the follow up? Right. Is that the military simulator?
We'll see. I mean, there've been people who've been successful with logistics games. So there's, he's not totally far off. It's not quite 99%. It is 6 out of 7. No.
Yeah, large majority. So let's talk about the game a little bit. It's been on early access since June 22nd.
Yes.
I was very fortunate. I got a code. I got to play it a little bit ahead of time. Very happy. And you guys gave us a code to give away for the audience, we really appreciated. The audience went nuts for it. They loved it. How is your perception of the reception? I asked that specifically because sometimes, right, there's perception, reality. There's maybe the higher ups and the lower get different. How is your perception of the reception of the game so far?
Yeah, so good. I mean, so we were the #1 best-selling PC game in the world, though, for the whole weekend after we launched, and so that's #1. So that's great, and we've been strong since. We were a little worried because Steam started their summer sale about a week after we launched, and we weren't on sale, so that affected, and we didn't want to put the game on sale because we didn't want to turn off the people who had just bought the game a few days before that, right? So but we still stayed in the top 10, oftentimes in top number 7, number 8, number 9, number 7. We just go kind of in that all through that next first 4 or 5 days of the sale, that's a lot of interest. We've had literally tens of millions of people engage with the game in some way, whether that be through YouTube, through Twitch, visiting our page on the Steam store, something like that. So there's an awful lot of interest in what we're doing. We also at the same time received a lot of messages about things that we can do better. So more content, for example. There's only 4 missions in the game right now. A lot of players feel like there ought to be more than 4 missions. There's going to be a lot more than 4 missions. But one of the reasons why we started the game, released the game at this stage, is to get that kind of feedback, because it's not just the 4 mission piece. We knew that we were going to get feedback about that. It's that, this person with this PC and this internet connection is having a connection problem. And we can't test for that. Trust us. All the networking issues we knew about were fixed before we shipped the game, right? And we had 50 people pounding on the game simultaneously, day after day after day, to make sure we got everything through it, right? And then, but you can't test for that sort of stuff, right? So we want to get that feedback. But then we also get other feedback, which is, it's a whole mess of the settings were confusing to me, or this part of the experience isn't quite right. You should do this, etc. And our goal in launching was to begin building a community of people who are going to stay with us for the long haul and help us establish 6 days as a franchise, as an experience that can continue to deliver these real world, highly realistic experiences across history. That is what we're trying to do, and we wanted to engage the community doing that. And so already, within just a few weeks of launching, our Discord server hit 20,000 members. Our Steam community has 70,000 members. In just 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, this is really, really a lot of traction. And all that stuff, all the things people are saying, all that stuff, it gets fed into a group of people on our team who evaluate all that information so that we can continue making the product stronger and stronger. At this point, we've only released, less than 10%, probably 5 to 10% of what's actually going to be in the game. And anybody who buys the game now, of course, gets all of that remaining content for free before the price goes up. But in exchange for that, we ask that they give us feedback, and so that we can continue making that experience stronger and stronger.
I love that. I'm sorry. I mean, it might be biased because you're my guest on my show, but I do love that, because how many times have, you've waited for a game, you pre-order it full price, and when it drops, it just feels like, did anyone test this? Did anyone play this before? And it's like, what is happening? And not to name names. I don't want to burn bridges. But sure. And so I'm okay. I'm okay with having that compromise with you and your organization, saying, hey, this is some of what we're doing. This is a taste of what we're doing. This is the, whatever you want to call it, the bones of what we're doing. And there's going to be so much more meat added onto it. Is it too much pressure to say Is there a timeline? Is there an idea of when more content might be coming?
Yeah, our goal is to release some new content every quarter,
Okay.
and then to actually get the game in full release towards the end of 2024.
I think that's very fair. I think that's very fair. I know for some it might seem like a long time, but like you said, comparing to these AAA, whatever, where there's a new Madden every year, so it doesn't like I gotta wait a year for the full game, but it makes sense when you're building it piece by piece. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's our goal, and I want to make sure it's always a goal, right? And we'll have the content ready. But I'll tell you, there's an aspect of this that people don't fully, I think, contemplate about release timing, which is that it's very hard to make the content, first of all. But if you get that content done at a time when, let's say, Microsoft's about to release Starfield, right? You can't release it that week because nobody's going to pay attention. And when we count on that new content to stimulate new sales so that we can continue making the game better.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
it's the indie movie releasing the same day as like the next Avengers thing. It's like, you're not helping yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Not a good plan. Right. Exactly right. So if we miss by a week or two, please don't send
the hate mail. Hate mail goes straight to Peter. Peter, what's your email, Peter? The hate mail needs to go straight to you.
Exactly.
Okay, so
feedback at WTFradio.com.
Yes, I love it. That's perfect. Yeah, we'll take it all on. And it's incredible too to say that to be willing to put yourself out there kind of this early in the process, right? To knowing that, like you said, it's limited, it's 4 missions, it's a small piece of the full content in a day and age where everybody's got a 30-second attention span, it seems like. I mean, it's hard to say, we're going to give you a sample and then slowly release it out. And then to say also that, send us the feedback. Let us know what you feel so that we can make the game better. Because I'm sure, like when you said, when you have 70,000 plus people playing it and a 50-man team, which I'm sure not all of them are going to read the incoming feedback. So like that's a weighted scale. Like it's slanted. How do they have the time to read all the feedback?
You know what? We are actually able to read most of the feedback. We have there's like 5 people that are out there looking at the feedback on the forums and in our customer service, and they and we are actually able to read the bulk of the feedback. Fortunately, a lot of feedback runs in trends, so we're able to say, oh yeah, more content. Got it. They want more missions.
Yeah.
Got it. Right.
Yeah.
So that's half the feedback.
Keywords. Yeah. Buzzwords.
Yeah. And so we can filter through it. But we do really have a human being, one of those people looking at all the feedback, looking for the trends and reporting the trends then to our leadership team. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. We're going to get to the questions pouring in. I'm curious, just me and you in the room. Okay, we're just 2 guys chatting right now. I might know a little bit about IT and how these things kind of work out. Was there ever a moment where a bug became a feature, like kind of thing, where like, oh, that kind of worked out in the best way possible?
Well, almost, but we decided not to do it. There was a bug that literally made it look like like a Star Destroyer from Star Wars had crashed into the landscape of Fallujah. It looked exactly like that.
That's awesome.
I mean, we had the screenshots because everybody was like, that's weird. Click, click, everybody's taking screenshots. Decided that would not be appropriate.
Yeah,
so we took that out.
Yeah, you get a license. You're like, that's one of those, which actually brings another question to mind. And I know this is probably way too early to even think about. But sometimes you have games, Call of Duty, Fortnite, whatever, where it kind of starts out maybe serious and like, aesthetically looking real and these things. And the next thing you know, you got cowboys and space aliens and John Wick running around. Like, is there ever gonna be a point where you're like, kind of like, again, because this game is super, super real, super realistic, super in the moment. If there was enough feedback, would there be like kind of like a playful, like it turns into a paintball match or any like these crazy modes or anything like that?
We don't have plans for one right now. I wouldn't say that that's totally out of the question yet. So, honestly, one of the challenges that we're still struggling with creatively is at some point we would like to have a competitive experience. Right now, it's going to be a single player story campaign and a co-op experience and a variety of co-op experiences. But there are players who definitely want us to take what we've done with procedural architecture, for example, where the map changes every single time and put that into a competitive game. But on the other hand, I think because of the subject matter, we need to be very, very careful about how we would do that. So we haven't answered that question yet, but being able to leverage our technology in ways to create a competitive game that isn't a reproduction of a recreation of a specific battle, I think that's something that would be interesting to us.
Right. Yeah. No. And I think that makes perfect sense. And we've seen it in the industry before. And again, I'll reference Fortnite, where the game that was originally envisioned and originally announced, and then there, I forget, for whatever reason, they kind of pivoted and they're like, well, you can do this builder thing. And then all of a sudden it blew up, and that became, and now that is Fortnite versus what it was originally intended to be. So, I mean, I'm sure there could be at some point.
Right. Battle Royale. Absolutely. It was Battle Royale. Yeah. Who knew? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. You don't know. I mean, here's the thing about making a video game. If you're going to do something truly innovative, you're going to spend years building that technology. But once you've got that technology, you can do a lot of things with it.
Right.
It just takes years to get you to that point. That's why it's taken us so long in the second round to make 6 Days in Fallujah, right? In the first round, what took us so long was because we made a completely destructible battlefield. That was okay. And then on round 2, we made procedural architecture and ditched the totally destructible battlefield for reasons that we can go into some other time if you're interested. But but procedural architecture also turned out to be almost as difficult of a technical challenge as a completely destructible battlefield.
Yeah,
for dozens.
It's so true. It's so true. We have games today, the large majority of them, where they're not procedurally generated. It's loading a map, and you'll still have textures in the wrong places and things crashing, and like it's just drawing the map as it's supposed to be, and yet it sometimes can't get it right. So I can't imagine the amount of ones and zeros it takes to move things around constantly and make it work. It's insane. It really is.
It was hard. It was hard. I mean, I got a bunch of people who have made games for a long time. We've calculated how hard it was going to be. It was 3 times harder than that for reasons that we just didn't see until you get into it. That's the problem.
Is there the potential, and again, we're asking real technical questions here, is there potential to license out the technology the way like the Unreal Engine, so to speak?
Probably not. Probably not. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, we'd have to build an infrastructure to do that. And we'd have to, frankly, we'd have to make our tools a lot more robust than they are right now. It takes, in addition to the training somebody needs to have, for example, to be an artist or a level designer in the game, we look for people with years of experience doing that in other games. But then once they're on board, it takes 2 or 3 months to just train them in how to use our tools. Wow. And that's, Then even at that point, they're still brittle, because we're constantly improving the base technology, which then means that you have to update the tools that are used to leverage that technology. So that back and forth is constantly creating new bugs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're just not set up to license. We're set up to just have an internal team that really can, with its own built-in tech support, call the engineer who wrote that bug.
Right, just pound away on the thing.
Exactly.
So, where are you guys based out of? Remind me.
So the studio is based in Seattle.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was hoping it was nearby. I was like, I'm just going to show up.
You're welcome.
I'll figure it out.
You're welcome to. You're welcome to. There's not always a lot of people in that office,
right,
because we do a lot of remote work. Although the office is open every day, and we get people come in every single day. There's some people who prefer to work in the office, and there's some people who prefer to work remotely. So I can't promise, even if you do. So before you buy your plane tickets,
we'll coordinate.
And it's downtown Seattle, so you might want to bring some support.
Fair enough. Again, last kind of general question is that just to give people an idea, I know this is early access. It's PC only at the moment. console is in the roadmap.
absolutely.
It's in the plan
For our full release, yes.
for the full release. Is it like, I don't want to say cross-platform because I know that's not the right term. Is it both, or are you leaning one way or the other?
No, the plan is to be on both PlayStation and on Xbox. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I play on PC when I have to, but
You're a console guy.
I'm a console guy.
We've got controller for you.
Oh
You
yeah,
can play with a controller.
that's right.
So
That's
we'll bring you one step closer.
We're good.
You can use a wired controller or a wireless, probably even.
There you go. For us guys with accessibility issues, so I have nerve damage in my hands and missing some of my digits. It's a little more difficult, obviously, to play keyboard and mouse. So we appreciate when you guys put in there the accessibility for us to play. So.
Well, thank you. No, thank you, because that's another thing that we just invested a lot in, and it was very important to us. And we we have, and quite frankly, we missed it just a little bit on our initial release. The controllers, the controls of the controller were a little. There's 2 or 3 things that were wrong. First of all, last minute bug. We screwed up the settings. So if you chose one setting of this is the mapping for the controls on your controller, you got a different one, which I'm sure frustrated a whole bunch of people. We fixed that, but then some of the curves, in the responsiveness were also not quite right, and there were a couple of bugs that we found and we fixed those, and we've got another batch of fixes that we're gonna release in our next patch, which could be this week or next week.
Yeah. I was gonna say, if I'm nitpicking, and I honestly, so much of the game I really enjoyed, and we talked about this briefly before we went live, is just the feel of it, right? The emotion that it elicits, where I go like, yeah, I remember this. I remember this feeling of panic and worry and stress and not knowing where that next bullet's coming from. And everything from the way the vision works, the way the radios work, there's such attention to detail in the moment. Someone else was mentioning, and I didn't even think about it to just now, the way where you're looking from inside or outside to inside, how kind of your eye has to adjust to the darkness and these different things where, you might play another game and you go like, this is so annoying. But in reality, this is what it's like. This is it.
You got it. Man. That's what we're trying to do. Yep. That's what we're trying to do. Taking some risks with that, because a lot of the things that we're doing in that regard are conveniences that other games have said, we're just not going to burden the player with those. And we said we're going to burden the player with those.
Yeah, I just do it. No jams. I don't want to have to chain and then tap the thing. It just we don't need that. I don't need that frustration. It's this combat, man. We don't want that. Right? My weapon is always good. Never jams. Never did.
Thank you. That's another quote that I need to use, because that is a request we get over and over and over again. Weapons jam, especially the saw, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yes, true. That's a holy war in the video game business that existed for 30 years. And I don't want to step into it.
Yeah. And honestly, again, me being an infantry guy, our bread and butter was our weapons. We would clean it on a mission. We'd be in the middle of it. If we're sitting down, we're cleaning it. Because again, in the middle of a firefight, I mean, I used to always tell this with my team, there's only so many things you can control. You can be physically fit. You can control your own fitness level. What you put into your body, energy, food, you can control that to a degree. And the cleanliness of your weapon, right? These are the things we can control, because when the next contact comes, not if, when the next contact comes, it could be anywhere from anything, you need to be prepared. But yeah, my weapon never jammed, not once. I broke a firing pin once, but that was a whole separate incident. Okay, so some of the questions from the audience that I've been sitting on. From Greg, I really want to know how AI is going to be fully incorporated in games as a whole. I know it's already being implemented somewhat, but I feel like it could be limitless. I would assume it's used in 6 days just by the level design. So any comments on the AI of the whole thing?
So yeah, speaking specifically of 6 Days in Fallujah and our AI in 6 Days in Fallujah, we have taken a much different approach to AI than a lot of other games take. So because we have a co-op game inside of a procedurally generated world that is an open sandbox, we cannot use many of the techniques that are used for AI in Call of Duty. For example, you'll notice that when you can play Call of Duty with bots, for example, and they're not that great. And that's because there's a limit to how much intelligence they can build into them. The AI that they're using when you practice it with bots for a multiplayer game is different than the AI that they're using in the single player game. So we've taken a completely different, a third approach to how we call it block scale AI. And we allow the enemy AI to move anywhere on the battlefield. So if you're playing Call of Duty or most other single player games, or co-op games, they've got a very narrow area, very small area that they can move in, and they have a limited number of things that they can do within that area. And they're basically established by when the player steps on a trigger or when they notice a threat. Okay, so we have taken a different approach to that. Our AI can go anywhere on the battlefield, and then they have a whole bunch of tactics we programmed into them that are based on the actual tactics that Marines and soldiers told us happened to them in Fallujah, as well as lots and lots of stacks of documents that we've gotten about the actual tactics. So they'll stalk you, they'll flank you, they'll set up ambushes, they'll hit and run, which is something that's kind of, yep, all these things. And then we had to optimize it, and we had to re-optimize it. We had to re-optimize it and re-optimize it because the most expensive stuff that's happening in the game, expensive in terms of the cost on the CPU, what slows the performance of the game. The most expensive stuff is the character movement. And so if you've got 15, 20 AI running around a map, each of them calculating their own AI all the time, you've got to really optimize, re-optimize, make those super, super efficient, or you're only going to have 4 AI that are running around the map at a time. And the game's going to be much, much different. So that is something we invested a ton of time, ton of money, smart people solving very difficult problems there. So that's the enemy AI. What you're going to see us doing later this year is giving you access to an AI fire team that are also going to have that level of intelligence that we've built into our enemies. That next generation, let's call it, simulation, AI simulation, and you'll be able to lead them with something we call the go command, where for people who played the tactical shooters back, the original Rainbow Sixes, etc., or more recently Ready or Not, you've got, they've got wheels and stuff like that to assign this command, that command. So our go command is a much different approach because we want the player to remain focused on the target and what's going on in the world and not to have interface get in their way.
Right.
So the go command lets you issue a command as easily and quickly as you shoot your weapon. You aim, but instead of pushing the trigger, you push the go button, and the game figures out what the right command is based on modifiers to that button and what you're pointing at. Between the two of those, there's a contextual understanding, and the player gives them a hint with a modifier key. And so between those two things, it very accurately can understand when the player intends to. Now, I want my guys to stack on that door as opposed to I want my guys to suppress that door.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, in the military sense of like in CQC and things, hand commands, right? There's only a finite amount of hand commands that we can give, but it's the most important things, right? It's the go, the stop, the shoot, the watch, whatever. And so having that makes total sense. And somebody put in the comments the same reaction that I had, like, hit and run, really? Like this it's the most annoying thing, and it's sad, but it's true. You get to a point where you 2 shots would fire off, and And you know the new guys because they're like ducking and panicking. I'm like, yeah, it's not even worth it. The guy's gone. He's already gone. Like we get so numb to it of like this. That's just a bullet. It's fine.
Yes.
But yeah, you guys, man, you're nailing it. You're nailing the experience.
Oh,
man, do these guys have to do kitchen duty at all? Do they get like fire watch or anything like that? Because if so, you're all the way there.
Or sleeping on the mats that the insurgents slept on the night before.
Yep.
I heard that story a number of times as well.
Oh yeah.
They're crazy stuff.
We'd be out. Well, for us, we were usually out in the boonies and the woods and mountains, but you'd find holes dug out, and you're like, yeah, somebody slept here. I'm like, well, it's already there. Might as well.
Might as well. Yep.
Might as well use it, man.
That's got to be eerie though. That's got to be weird and eerie.
It's yeah.
Spooky.
It's definitely a weird feeling, but again, and every person's service was different and their experience is different. But I know for me, we operated the majority of our time behind enemy lines. And so it just became like you go through a town, everybody waves, and then you get shot in the back. Like that's just how you just get used to that experience. Another question, any possibility, and I can only imagine this adds to the level of difficulty, people asking so much, any possibility of this becoming VR? Like having that kind of a part added.
Yeah. So interestingly, we actually started when we restarted the project in 2017. We actually built a VR prototype, and we ended up moving into flat screen instead of VR because the budget that it was going to take us to make the game what we needed it to be could not be supported by the size of the VR market. So now that we are doing what we're doing in flat screen, we may generate enough revenue to be able to afford to make a VR project. I did have Marines who served in Fallujah actually play the VR prototype, and I'm speechless in trying to explain their reaction because it was very real. Yeah.
When you first said that, you're like, well, we had a prototype and then we did, like, my thought was it was too real. It was too much. And they're like, you know what, let's go flat screen because people can't handle that, They
had to sit down. They had to sit down after it.
Yep. I could imagine. Yep. I got a couple guys in there. They're like, nope, not doing that. That's too much. That would be a lot to process. Even in, we're still, in my opinion, at a point in gaming where again, some of those flat screen games, the 2D games, they're gorgeous, PS5 games, they push, but the VR, I feel like we're still not quite photorealistic yet. We're still a little bit catching up. They're coming out great. Some of these games are incredible to play, Vader Immortal and these games that I play, the Walking Dead one in VR. But you still, while you're immersed, you can still, I don't know, you tell it's a digital, whatnot. But I can only imagine in a couple of years when the technology is like, when you're like, it's like Google Maps, but you're getting shot at. That's somebody said PTSD inducing. That could be.
It is only a matter of time before that between Unreal Engine 5 and the next generation probably of VR hardware, that combination probably.
Scary. Scary.
Yeah.
A question from Scott. Does this game encompass both the first and second battle, or is it primarily set around a specific one?
Yeah, so the full release will start in the first battle, and the March battle, and then most of the experience, however, will be in Phantom Fury, the second battle. So right. Vigilant Resolve, of course, was the one in March after the contractors got hung from the bridge, and then well, actually, I don't want to. I guess most of your audience actually knows the story, so I'm probably not giving anything away. But for players who don't know, there's some surprises in what happened during Vigilant Resolve, and the lessons that I think we learned from Vigilant Resolve, and then but then we're going to start there. We're going to again, if you know the story, you'll know where we're going to end that part, and then come back to it in November where Phantom Fury started just outside the city.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Man, we're already at an hour. Do you have a few more minutes?
I got a few more minutes for you. Yes.
Okay, outstanding.
I mean, I love the questions. Quite frankly, this is an audience that understands what we're doing and what we're talking about, which is refreshing.
The cross section of like hardcore military, but also like hardcore gamers. Like we know what we're talking about. So I'm curious. So you've said obviously this is not a documentary, right? This is not meant to be the exact story of X, Y, and Z doing X, Y, and Z. More in capturing the stories and the feelings and the emotions and the things. You're not trying to make some type of political commentary on this, but a game that uses procedural generation to create different scenarios and outcomes each time. How does this feature affect when you're doing narrative and gameplay, right? Because we're so used to, especially in military games, here's your mission, there's your objective, go do the thing. How, what are the benefits and drawbacks of that in this kind of a game?
Yeah, right. Okay, great creative question. This is a struggle for us too, because the reason why procedural architecture exists is to simulate that feeling of the unknown. So if we don't have it, we feel like players are gonna, it's recon by death, right? You go in the room, oh, that's where the bad guys are. Okay, next time I'll start with my weapon up, right? So shoot the guy, but yeah. So, but on the other hand, there are situations where the physical geometry of the space was integral to the way that that encounter played out.
Right.
So then that's basically the way we're handling it. So in the engine, we can just say, don't regenerate this, just keep that static. So there will be specific parts of the experience in the campaign, especially key moments where we're just not going to regenerate that geometry. But in other cases where it just does not matter whether the door was on the left or the right, then then we're going to procedurally generate those parts. Yeah.
Outstanding. Okay. What else can I ask? Well, I still have you. I think we've asked that. So video games, again, a more broad question, but video games have shown to have various effects on pop culture, inspiring movies, books, music, fashions, social movements, everything. The Hunger Games franchise I have here was influenced by the Japanese movie Battle Royale, which was based on a novel that was inspired by a video game. So what are some of the examples of what are some of the examples of video games that have influenced pop culture, in your opinion, that are, also influencing maybe some of the elements of the game?
Yeah. Well, so I think we certainly draw a lot of lessons from the original tactical shooters and tactical shooters that we've played over the years, for sure. We take some inspiration from the choices that they've made and how they've shaped that experience, understanding what we think was appropriate to take forward, what was appropriate to do very differently. So I mean, here I'm referring to all the Rainbow Six games, the original Rainbow Six games, although Siege there's certainly a lot to learn from Siege as well, but the original Rainbow Six games especially. And I would say Call of Duty more than Battlefield. And the reason why I say that is when I think of our inspiration, it's more, from the story standpoint, I think there is actually a lot to learn from the way Call of Duty tells stories. They've adopted a formula and it has become formulaic. I think everybody complains about that. It's become too formulaic. But from that formula, there are definitely lessons to learn about what works, what you can't really do interactively, and what you can do interactively. So there's some stuff to draw from that. But in terms of the mechanics, I would say it's everything from Dark Souls to like I say, all that whole collection of tactical shooters. We're a co-op game, even games like Army of Two, for example. There's things
Right.
that we can learn from Army of Two. It's a third-person game, but there's still stuff we can learn from that. So, yeah, all the way across, I'd say that you can't really point to one specific thing. It's more like just this entire body of work. But I can tell you what I hope our impact will be on pop culture.
Yeah.
And there's a few points there that are really important to us. The first one is the reason why the project started, which was we believe from the stories we've been told firsthand by people who are there. We've been told remarkable stories about remarkable people, and the stories have not been told because the Iraq War is controversial. And it's you could say certainly not fair to those individuals who did those amazingly courageous things. They did not do those amazingly courageous things because they wanted their story to be told. They did them for other reasons. That's what's interesting. That's what is especially sad about a media that has been afraid to tell those stories, because those stories tell us an awful lot, not just about individuals, but about moments and how people can react in really, really difficult, challenging situations. And we want not just to tell those stories, but we want players to be able to test themselves and how they would respond in those same scenarios. So I think that, and I hope that, and I know for sure, already tens of millions of people who have never heard of the Battle of Fallujah are hearing about it now.
Yeah.
They may not play the game, but they are hearing about it and they're curious about it. You can go on Wikipedia and look at, pages and when they get traction. Right after we announced 6 Days in Fallujah, the traction to the Battle for Fallujah went way up, right, on Wikipedia. So that's one piece. There's a second piece that I think that we're going to get into. That it goes back to what I was saying earlier, which is it's something Eddie Garcia, the Marine who conceived of the whole idea, said to me. He said, "Peter, there's no such thing as a kinder and gentler war." Right? If you're going to fight a war, you have to fight it to win, and that is bloody and disgusting and horrible. And so you better do everything you can possibly do to avoid it. But if you're going to fight it, then you have to win. So there's a lesson in that I think a general population does not fully understand, because we get ourselves halfway into problems. But, if anybody's ever been in a fight, once you're in the fight, you actually really hope the fight's going to end.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's dangerous, and it takes a lot of courage when you are an individual in a city surrounded by people who are willing, anxious even, to die for a cause, and that cause is killing you. There isn't a second cause. That's the cause. The cause is killing you, and giving people that feeling, that understanding, I think, and understanding the consequences of their choices, all of which are bad, I'm hoping helps people understand the reality of, unlike the glamorization, but the reality of combat. I hope helps people understand that not just the respect for those people who we put into that situation, but the danger of that situation, and that the reality that do everything you can to avoid that situation. But if you are going to fight, you have got to finish that fight.
That's so deep. And it's funny, I draw a parallel to you guys releasing this game. The idea of, like, we started this, we got into it, we got to finish. There are people that don't want us to win. There are people that don't want to see this and want to stop it and whatever, and the political message and this and then the hate and people, whatever. We've got to see it through. We got to finish the fight. We got to win this fight. So
that's right.
Kudos, man, to you and the team. Two last questions for you. This is an industry that's built on copycat. in the sense of like when something works, let's do that. Battle Royale is one of the most recent examples. Outside of maybe procedurally generated maps, which again, great, but a little easy of an answer. What's maybe something you believe that could be trendy, something that people are going to look at and go like, we need to implement that. What do you see? What are the highlights of the game?
So I think true stories is one of the things that's going to come. That honestly, when people saw the reaction to when we announced the game in 2009, it scared people away from true stories.
Yeah.
But I hope that if we do this thing as respectfully and appropriately as we are trying our hardest to do, that it will show people that this is a genre. The concept of true stories is a genre that video games should be exploring. And I hope that that's a trend that we can stimulate. Yeah.
Fair enough.
The second one is the games are going to get more difficult.
Which, I mean, I feel like, because obviously growing up in the 80s and games were built to not let you win. And then at some point it shifted into this philosophy of like, just let them die a billion times so that they can finish it. And now over the last couple of years, I have seen kind of with the Dark Souls, with these different kind of games where there's this return to form of like, no, it should be you should be something to finish a game. That should be something to talk about. Okay, I like that. That's a great answer. I love that. Last question before we finally let you go, because I could talk to you all day about this. This is this is so cool and so fascinating to me, and obviously to the viewers. A bunch of people still watching for some reason. I don't know why they listen to me talk. Knowing that the roadmap for this game, like you said, it could be a year or more, depending on how things turn out, to the full release. Yeah, I know you're going to be fully head on this for that time. Do you ever take a moment to think, what's next? Is it a sequel? Is it a spinoff? Is it a all new IP? Just shake the crystal ball, the 8-ball. What do you see down the line?
More true stories for 6 days. Yeah, absolutely. So more true stories that bring insight into events that shape the world. That is what our mandate is. And I expect that, assuming that we have the good fortune to be able to continue doing this, that's what we're going to do.
Would you ever open it up, let's say, to like, here's a website, tell us your stories, and then you could like kind of pick and choose, like, wow, that's something, like, or is it like, how do you determine, what's the next series of stories, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, we're open to that. I get a lot of emails actually with people offering those stories right now. And yeah, so we've given some, but not deep thought into which stories we want to tell next. Our heads are very much consumed with trying to tell this one first. So, I feel bad actually, honestly, because the stories that I get sent are actually, many of them are I mean, you've lived it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you pick this one versus that one? Yeah, it's hard.
It makes sense.
Yeah, and so I feel bad because we can't necessarily respond as comprehensively to these people who've offered us these wonderful, amazing stories, because we're just so consumed right now with what we're doing with Fallujah. But I'm still collecting them. I just don't know if I can do anything.
Yeah, rainy day, you never know. Do you think, and again, I know I'm putting you in a position to like think so far down the line. Do you think you want to tell more stories of that timeline, stories of Afghanistan? Somebody said the Battle of Mogadishu. Like, is there, if you had to guess, we'll just say, I'm not going to hold you to it, but if you had to guess, is it a wider story, or is it more narrow to a specific time and place? I mean, what do you think?
So, either one. The stories from these modern times are, and there's so many of them that people don't know, that tell you something about what was going on. And so Yeah, so it's hard for me to say it's going to be, focused on a particular battle or a particular person, or it's going to be broader than that, because we just haven't really thought it all the
Sure.
way through yet.
It's fair.
Yeah, only
Fair.
because we're consuming. Yeah, and it's not that it's not in the back of our minds. It is in the back of our minds. It is the back of our minds, but it's not. It hasn't made it to the front of our minds yet, because the
Gotcha.
front of our minds is just occupied 100 hours a week on getting Fallujah done.
I
Yeah.
can't imagine the amount of pressure you guys are under, and this game, I mean, has such a history. Just the game, like not even the stories that the game's about, but just the development of the game itself, and bringing it to life has such a storied history. I feel it's it's living the battle of Fallujah in its own way, right? Of attempting
Making
it,
itself.
failing,
Yeah.
attempting it again, and gotta win it no matter what it takes. So it's I mean it's art and life to art, all those things. Man, there's so many great parallels with this. I love it. I love it. I'm gonna finally let you go. I gotta say that, hopefully a year from now, you could be the first 3-time returning guest,
Great.
and
That'd be awesome.
and we can talk about the full release and all the stuff, and then talk, postulate on the future and what's
There you
next,
go.
and talk about all the massive amount of awards you've won, and you have the whole
I
back
like
line
that
with
as well.
trophies and plaques and all that stuff. So
Right,
this has
yes.
been Peter, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. This has been an absolute pleasure. I will give you the last few seconds here to talk directly to the audience, to the vets out there, to the players out there. Let them know what you think. Let them know where can they follow you, the game, buy the game, all that stuff. Talk about it.
Well, the game's on Steam, so just typing in 6 days on Steam will get you to 6 days in Fallujah. And yeah, I guess the message that it's you. I know your audience is filled with people who served, and it's our honor. I think I grew up in a time when I was younger, when there was still a draft. This is before I was of draft age, but there was when I was younger, there was a time when I was pretty sure that I was going to end up serving, whether it was as a volunteer. Later it became clear that it'd have to be as a volunteer, because when I was real young, it was mandated. And I think our culture has gotten away from that understanding of service, and is such a theoretical that somebody else does, that the more that we can bring the reality back to people, I think that it'll help them understand the real people who we're asking to do these things. And so for me, when somebody who has stood guard on my behalf says, thank you for doing this thing that represents what we've done faithfully, I can't tell you what it means to us to hear those kinds of words. So I just want to tell your community, thank you for the moral support you've given us when we've been under attack from people who don't understand what we're trying to do. The one community that we counted on all the time that absolutely saw right through that, knew exactly what we were trying to do, are the people who had served. So thank you very much. That support really, really meant a lot, not just to me, but to our whole team. Really did.
That's awesome. I mean, I can't. There's nothing better I could say about it. I mean, it's a great community, the military veteran community. I believe that we see what you're trying to do. There are I mean, I know, certain shows or movies where we've called out where it's like, this isn't for us. This isn't meant to show people what it's like. This is, you see these movies like Purple Hearts and all this is where you're just like, oh, come on, man. But I mean, I see what you guys are doing. I appreciate it as a gamer and as a veteran. I think it's incredible, and I wish you guys all the success. I'm enjoying my copy. I highly implore everyone out there to go download it, play it. And if you're not a gamer, spread the word. Just put it out there. Share it on social media. Let people know it's out there and it's available. And I got people saying they're waiting for the PS5 release. So you got pre-sales ready for you when you guys put that thing out there, so you can get them pre-sales going. With that, I mean, yeah, I'm looking forward to our next conversation, because we got to have you back. When the console release comes out, and we can start talking about the DLC. I want to be Batman in the Battle of Fallujah and all that stuff. You can start licensing skins and things like that.
That's the mod.
Outstanding. All right, guys, we're gonna go to a quick break. I'm gonna go say goodbye to Peter. When we come back, we'll have a little more show before we call it a night. Again, my guest, Peter Tamte, Victura Games, 6 Days in Fallujah. Go check it out. And we'll be back right after this break. Shots.
You're listening to the sounds of WTF Nation Radio.
Hey, you there? Yeah, it is right, you. Let me ask you something, right? Where the hell do you think that you're going? Oh, would you think because the show is going to commercial that means you get to just walk away? Well, CQ asked me to pass on the little message, alright? And it says, I'll be back.
After all I've done, do you love me now? Do you love me now? After all I've said, running through your head, do you love me now? Do you love me now? And if I told you
You're watching Pop Culture Warrior. The force is strong. They have the high ground.
Broadcasting live from the basement of the Pentagon. This is WTF Nation Radio.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm going to bring my good friend and co-host for the evening. Everybody, welcome back, Angry Elf.
He's back.
There he is, Mr. Elf. What'd you think of Peter Tamte?
Dude, that was awesome.
How awesome is that guy?
Seriously. Yeah, I I'll admit I haven't played the game, but I'm not a console guy, or excuse me, I'm not a PC guy.
Not a PC
I'm
guy.
a console guy. So
How dare you? How dare you, sir, not have played the game even though you don't play games on PC? You should have bought a PC just to play this game.
Yeah. And put it next to my PS5, my Xbox? Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. I'll wait. I've got a backlog longer than my arm and my dick of games I need to play. And yes, when this game comes out, I'm gonna buy it, and that'll probably bump everything that's out of the way.
There you go.
This game sounds awesome.
It's the one thing I didn't say in the interview that I was gonna say, and it's gonna sound like I chickened out, but I was gonna be like, there's a couple of nitpicks I have. But I was like, I don't want to turn this into like a not a review,
bash
but like,
session.
Yeah, like no, not a bash session, but more like a Q&A of where like, hey, we're gonna talk about that bug because of this, and we're gonna work and patch 2.6. Like I didn't want it to become a bug fix section, so I wanted to talk more about just kind of the game in general and kind of the themes and whatnot. But no, like for me, like I was playing through it and I didn't notice. And again, a lot of what they're trying to do is, what am I trying to say? Where things are in a shortcut, you're not supposed to have a lot of button prompts to do things, right? Because it should be instinctual. The game it knows or guesses what you're trying to do. So like one of the mechanics is you kind of stick to walls, right? And that's for, cover and concealment, like we've all been trained. And but sometimes I'm trying to just walk, like let's say there's a gap in the wall. I'm trying to walk through that gap and I notice I kind of zip and like magnetize to the wall, and then like, okay, I'm trying to pull off, and it's like it's almost like sticky, right? And I know in the sense the game is trying to guess, oh, he's trying to take cover and then peek out. And when I'm like, I'm just trying to get through the damn wall as fast as possible. I'm not trying to be in the kill box too long. But yeah, so again, but I get why that happens, but maybe there should be like a setting that you could kind of turn on off or sensitivity. Yeah. Right. That you can, but again, I didn't want to get into like the minutia of like, all right, let's do a bug report and like.
Well, but he said, he was sending out copies and expecting feedback from the users. Yeah. So you received the copy. Where's your feedback?
They don't want my feedback. They got real gamers.
They don't want CQ, the Pop Culture Warriors feedback.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
That's right. Because it'd probably take them about 6.5 weeks to read all your feedback.
I mean, I'm a thorough kind of guy. I'm a thorough kind of guy.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's it really much for this episode of Pop Culture Warrior. I want to thank everybody who's kind of just hung out.
Still there.
CQ, instead of a biography movie, have them make a game on your life. Oh God. What would the game of my life even be? Because there's a different. Well, here's the okay. real quick, here's the thing, because I honestly, not humble brag, whatever, but you know, I've heard many times where like, you know, oh, that should be a movie, or oh, that should be a book, or oh, that should be now I can add, oh, that should be a game. Um, but it's weird because my life really is this weird mishmash. It would be like if you watched a movie and then like a part of it was a comedy and then a part of it was a horror and then a part of it was like it would be like different genres throughout the movie, and it would be this weird patchwork quilt. So, you know, like, yes, I grew up poor in the ghetto, you know, teenage mom, no dad, you know, that's like your poverty starting from nowhere kind of, you know, work your way up thing. But then, you know, and I left home at 13 and I was on my own. I did all that stuff by myself. But then I joined the military, so then you got the military part of it, and you know, working your way up and building something of yourself. But then I get wounded, so then there's 2 years in the hospital, and that's its own kind of story about overcoming the this and that. And then I met my wife, and so there's this love story aspect to it, and then there's a whole like the next chapter is ugly. I don't even like to talk about it, but what happened with family and some other stuff and legal stuff and whatever. And then, you know, being a wounded warrior and becoming a public speaker and then doing stand-up comedy and then doing podcast. Like it's a constant change of the status quo. So I don't even know how you would like what part of that would be, you know, like when we wrote the show, it was wounded, you know, and finds comedy. Like it was just a tiny portion of the true kind of total story. So yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, maybe I wouldn't go to Netflix, I wouldn't go to Hulu, but I wouldn't go. What about Angel Studios? Go to Angel Studios.
What the hell is Angel Studios? What is that?
You seriously?
Yeah, I don't recall Angel Studios.
You heard that? You heard that movie that recently came out on the 4th of July, Sound of Freedom?
Oh, yeah.
They're the studio that produced that. Not to go down that rabbit hole, but anyways, the point of matter is like they seem to be an up and coming studio. Go to them.
I mean, dude, if Purple Hearts became a movie, I mean, come on.
Yeah, but come on, but we want you to get your fair share of pay. If you're going to be a writer or a producer or starring as Michael Carrasquillo as Michael CQ Carrasquillo. I mean, if you're going to portray yourself, get your
man.
I
don't know. I don't know. Anyway.
Just as long as I can cameo as myself.
That's always the caveat. It's so funny. Like it's a joke. I know it's a joke, but it's so funny that everyone goes, "Oh, your life should be a movie. Just make sure I get to play me." Or
no. So this is the thing. I'll set away my likeness so they can CGI the age and the freaking weight off my ass, so I look like I did when I was 24. I'll sign away everything. Yeah, I'll be an extra in freaking all these movies. Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Make me look good.
So if you're willing to take $200, we'll use your likeness. That's but then I get to do
$200 and validate my parking.
But then I get to sell your likeness to all like the gay porn sites and everything. So you're gonna be real popular.
As long as I get my 2-cent residuals.
No, that's you get zero residuals because you're signing away your digital likeness. So you get zero residuals.
Okay, that's
not
fine.
even the 2 cents.
I'll just go after that point. I'll just go move into my mountain house in Maine and never come out of hiding.
you'll get a lot of beers at the gay clubs, I bet. But
hey, that's fine. Free alcohol, whatever.
All right. Anyway,
all right. We better end this before it gets stupid.
Yeah. Before too late. All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in as always. Obviously, we are Pop Culture Warrior, but we're just one of the many shows here at WTF Nation Radio. Our parent station, which we are nothing without. So tune into the other shows here at WTF Nation Radio, including Sunday nights, The Sports Bar with Coach and King. Great show talking about all what's going on in the sporting world. I'm so excited because football is so close to being back. Oh, I can't wait. I miss my football. I love my football.
6 weeks, right?
Yeah, something
6
like
weeks.
that. We're very close. Very, very close. Obviously, those that know the station know that the Monday edition is our flagship, our OG, our original show here at WTF Nation Radio. The Monday edition, where we talk all about the news, the commentary, the discussion on what's happening in and around the world, which leads us to Tuesday nights right here, Pop Culture Warrior with CQ and tonight, Angry Elf. And then
Hello.
Wednesdays, we have the I almost said the sports bracket, The Smoke Pit, hosted by Radar and TZ. We miss Radar here. Oh, I miss Radar.
No, we don't. I don't miss Radar because I wouldn't have a job.
Co-hosts don't seem to miss Radar that much, but yeah, I got to throw him in the rotation, man. He's got to come back to visit once in a while. But the Smoke Pit is your go-to for all your shenanigans, your smoking and joking, your E4 Mafia and below. That's where they congregate. Much like around the Porta Johns, that's where they congregate. Thursdays, Sergeant's Time. You got, who's that? That's Ice and Spanky? No. Yeah, maybe. I don't know, man. I'm always busy on Thursday nights. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I'm always busy on Thursday nights. I never get to tune in. But they got all your Sergeant's Time stuff. They got your big army, all your E5 and above, all your green, tans, and browns, and all the things that you need to know to stay up to date and what's happening in the military. I left the service fucking, how long ago now? Like 2007. I retired.
So you left like,
yeah, my God, it's coming up on like 20 years.
yeah, because I just retired at 20 years. So we joined like 20 plus years ago.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you left in, CQ.
2007. So 30, 10, 16 years ago. Jesus Christ. I haven't been in uniform in 16 plus years. So yeah,
If you had a kid then, they'd be driving right now.
Yeah, it's scary. I know. Scott
You
said,
and kids.
get Gerard Butler to play CQ.
Oh, Liam Neeson.
Liam Neeson. Jesus Christ, how old do you think I am? Anyway,
but he's got a particular set of skills.
last show that his character does. Last show of the week is Friday Night Freedom. That's Kaz and Pookie, and that's they're bringing you just all the ridiculousness of the week and just talking about all the topics. So love those guys. They are always entertaining, bringing you some fun interviews and different conversations and whatnots. Why is this not going back to? Oh, that's why. Hey, welcome back.
Hello.
With that, lazy, I think Tom Cruise would be a better fit. Dude, how old do you people think I am that Tom Cruise and Liam Neeson are the people that are getting? Even Gerard Butler's a bit up there. Jesus Christ, give me.
Well, you know what?
Give me
doesn't
Henry
help?
Cavill. I think Henry Cavill could play a good CQ. That's
You know
what I
what doesn't help? CQ.
was that.
You got
Is it the gray?
you-
Yeah.
We're starting to get the gray in the beard. That's
Starting.
the problem.
I'm mostly gray now.
Well,
Jesus
you know,
Christ.
well, at least no one has come back and said Sir Patrick Stewart.
Yeah. You know who'd be a good CQ? Ian McKellen. That'd be Gandalf the
Ooh,
Grey.
I
would
would
be a
take that. I would take that.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, Rip Van Winkle.
You
I
shall
think
not pass.
Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for listening to Pop Culture Warrior, where we cover all the things of pop culture with a veteran twist. We hope you enjoyed our interview with Peter Tamte, the CEO of Victura,
That was great.
and the creator of 6 Days in Fallujah. If you want to learn more about his game and his company, check out their website at victura.gg. And if you want to support the writers and actors who are on strike for a fair deal, visit sagaftra.org and WGA.org to find out how you can help. Don't forget to follow or subscribe to our podcast, our channels, Pop Culture Warrior, everywhere on every social media platform, and WTF Nation Radio. Leave us a review, man, or a comment, or a whatever, man. I'd love to hear from you. I just want to hear from the peoples. Until next time, guys, this is Pop Culture Warrior signing off. Angry Elf, say goodbye.
Goodbye, Angry Elf.
There you go. And like my old first sergeant used to say, don't eat Cheetos and jerk off because it'll turn your dick orange. Good night.
Facts.
Doc! Oh, no! We're too late! We missed it! Oh, jeez, this is heavy. Wait a minute, Doc, I got a time machine! I'm just gonna punch in the coordinates. Pop Culture Warrior, Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on WTF Nation Radio. Now crank this bad boy up to 88 miles per hour.
Let's see it.